Good evening, everyone. We are going to talk about the accountability framework and the misinterpretation of the information sharing standard that we always use, aka TLP, especially in first or maybe to the another security communities also. So we are going to start with that. Well, the challenges in the information sharing between the international security community is very hard because we have to deal with many kind of the informations based on the many kind of the collective data, many kind of the benefits of the information sharing and the security itself, right? So there are many type of the information like a classified, non-classified, sensitive one, non-sensitive one, urgencies, level differences, and so on. Then we have also many kind of the form of the documentation itself. Then over there, we have to share between the people here with a different culture, language, common sense, and between of the handlers themselves, which are working together in the form of the security. So we have to admit to share informations to the right audience across cultures that like we are having now in the first is really a hard task to do. And for that, we have so many work groups, so many standards that actually becoming very active in the first in the form of the SIG, right? This is the core of what we are doing in security in the first community, actually. And we have many communications of the tools, information, presentation, education, data, and all of them shared in the TLP as the main ways to share to one to another here. Then talking about the TLP, we have ISO standard of the TLP, which can be discussed later on. Is in the as per shown in the screen in the ISO ICL 27010 and in 2015, I think, in NXC, it's stated about the red, amber, green, and white, which has been updated and have been brushed and currently to the TLP that we are using in the first and also defined in the CISA's organizations too as a traffic light protocol that we are using in the version 2 right now. Well, the link is here, and then you can see the QR code if you want to confirm that later on. But I think you know about this very well. But the thing is, do you actually understand about the definitions of the communities, organization, and clients that define the current use TLP and the difference between the what happened in the what has been the defined in the ISO standard itself? It has a slight differences that making a little bit biased to the if you want to achieve the information to be shared to the certain community, certain people, or certain clients, for example, and this ISO is not defined that pretty well, but it has a good definition for that in the TLP definition here in the TLP 6. So maybe it will be better if you take a look about the TLP definition to much more detail, especially to these definitions and to uh, the target of the sharing information itself. What has not been mentioned here is if you want to share information, you are becoming the as definition is the source. So the issues here, they are still lack of the understanding regarding the consequences of agreed upon handling labeled information in TLP itself. So we are dealing with those kind of the interpretations that up to the how the source would like to share the informations and there are slight probably we are dealing with the people with many languages, many cultures. It has difference in the norms, morals, and so on. Then we have to think about the what if those violation exists, right? So what is the link between the TLP's violation about and what we are having in the first? For example, we have the rules like this in the first, right? Like we if you are not compliant with the bylaws and if you are having the lack of corporations, for example, there are consequences for that. So how about to link these rules with violations of the standard that for the sharing information that becoming violated or becoming misinterpreted in this case? I'm gonna give you several examples for that. But before that, these are the questions that I think we need to ask ourselves what we may need them for then, and then the why we need it and why now. And lastly, is there any procedure and how to handle misinterpretation of the files and the information sharing then? So to be very honest, what we are having right now is an understanding or gentleman agreement to to handle this kind of the cases, which is a really a bad loophole that has to be filled, right? So this presentation is about this loophole and how to actually make prevent them to not be happen, especially to the people who's starting to join the first or joining the security community. So, for example, we have the TLP Amber presentation based on the TLP version 2, and the video or the picture is taken. And the presentation contents stated this is a TLP Amber. That is the thing here. And then there is a people, a person doing the picture being taken. And is it okay or not okay? But the presenter doesn't explicitly state whether taking picture is permitted. It's stated in the slides only that this is TLP colon amber, for example. Again, there is no confirmation also about the people who's taking the picture to announce it to the source that I'm or he taking the picture for this kind of the purpose, and the permission for that is not being attained in the very good manner. And then these things can actually bring bad effects that we understand about that too. Like, for example, shared in the SNS and then many kind of the possibility can happen, right? So how to prevent this to not happening? And in this kind of the cases, which is actually the error actually resides, and how to fix this kind of the error, right? So one of the thing that has not been presented pretty well probably in the TLP SIG pages is these details that saying TLP is not classification scheme, it's not a control marking, and TLP is a label for the definition to not intend to have the effect of freedom of information or social life in any kind of the jurisdiction. This is quite a good point to be, being grasped actually for the people who are going to do the presentation, especially with the very high level of the TLP itself. And this is actually being defined precisely and clearly in the CISA pages in this page. So we have the QR code for you for confirming that, saying about the TLP is not a control marking of the classification scheme, but not many people probably understand that pretty well, especially for the people like me who's not in the being educated in the Western hemisphere, for example, and my colleges. We are having a different kind of the classification. We are having a different culture of the sharing, for example, and we think mostly TLP is one of the aspect that related to the classification that we have to keep. Then people got violated by them. I just got angry to the people to the sharing it to the SNS, and start to issue some legal action for that. Right. So that is a kind of the misinterpretation that or handling errors that can really making things becoming worse. So maybe it will be good idea to add those phrases to this page, for example. And for TLP itself, it having the very good solution that I'm gonna explain about that later. But the source in this case has to make it sure that the community organization, the client that may receive informations, has to has to be clear to understand about this information can goes up to this level to this kind of the people, and he has to make sure to do that before the presentation started. So that is the deal with it. And if the source is not announcing that pretty well, and up to the conference, up to the events, up to the community to make the people around there to understand, the source is having a problem to to get this kind of the misinterpretation that has to be fixed. Then illustration number two is a this is a real case actually happened, and I'm gonna go into the detail for that. And there is a sharing information about the content designated as TLP Amber Streak in the closed forum, and the B is in the forum receiving those informations. B has a direct supervisor, which is Mr. C, and she's talking to D with the same group with a different organizations, which is not related to that forum. And D talks to A, and A claimed to be violated to the TLP, and for that, B losing his job, get fired. So what's wrong with this picture? Is it correct to have the B get fired from his or her job because of this kind of the what allegedly being violated? This is another misinterpretation of the TLP violation that actually can lead to the fatality, and the disease happens. And I want to prevent this to happen again. So another, I'm gonna say it again and again, TLP is not classification scheme, so don't expect to handle it as per that way. That is a really wrong, but people are still doing it that way too. And maybe it will be good to add that again in this slide, because people will, if in especially in the Eastern Hemisphere, where we're talking about TLP, we just go to this page and we read all of them, and letter by letter, right? So, but we don't go to the CISA page for having this kind of the details to be understanding more, because this is probably related to the regulation in the United States, for example. Then for that, TLP SIG is having the solution of the use cases, which is still not so many people understand that these cases is actually exist. So illustration number 3 is gonna explain about how we need those use cases in the actual way. So if we think about the ISO documentation cannot be freely shared in the SNS, and we know about that. And do you know why? Because of they really define it pretty well, letter luck, about the what don't and can't, and it has be it is clearly written, and if you can read it well, and it it is understanding in many cases about the what cannot be done, what should be done, and you are not eligible to do stuff like that, for example. And this is actually what we need to be done in the TLP, and the TLP SIG is making it a solution to present it is in the TLP use cases. So I really expect people to actually see this page and to understand about these uh, cases, that actually a very good example about the what has to be done and how to share it, and how to target the audience, how to deliver those kind of message in the TLP. And this is actually can prevent the unnecessary misinterpretation effect, as per explained before, right? So accountability is good to have the thing that having the framework to control it. So what we really need right now is to establish this kind of the framework that needed to be understood by the community, to keep the value of the trust, norms, and respect, intellectuality, to clarify the accountability, to prevent any kind of violations. And what happened if the violation is actually occurred, for example? We really have to understand in the international community that the details should be written clearly. So we are people with a different interpretation of the scope of the stuff that being shared, different regulation. We really have a many kind of level of the access control. We are having the different kind of the consequences based on the what we are living, and our position is, right. So to make sure that the people is actually agreed, and being in the same page, it has to be sure about that. If not, if we are not being sure of that kind of the sharing can be done, we have to probably consider to have the NDA to make sure the sensitivity is being intact and involved there. So if that is actually being violated, so how is actually the framework, the correct framework to handle those kind of the, for example, to deal with the accountability for that? we have to start to educate ourselves in the community to have this kind of this is actually the sample of the what kind of the accountability that has to be handled. For example, some violation is reported, and then we are creating issues for that, right? Like a ticket or whatever kind of the forms, and then we submit those kind of the issues and received and being evaluated by the people who can judge as a small committee, and try to make sure that it can be escalated to the person in charge, either gonna be the event or the sick or any kind of the forms of the events. And after that, we have to make a real pretty sure that this is actually accountabilities that are probably being needed. The violation is actually exists and recognized. Then we have to, like we are dealing with the incidents, right? We have to declare it as an incident. So we have to declare this as a violations, and we have to think how to deal with the accountability execution for that, right? So and then we apply the hearing. Small hearing is okay to make sure about the counterparts who's the one who's having the demerit and the one who's actually violate that will handle. We will understand and we try to fix the loophole here in that kind of the hearing, for example. And if the discussion is pretty hard and things need to be escalated, so probably we have to deal further to the either gonna be individual kind of the approach and to make the policy to be understood by him, or we have to make a better policies for handling stuff like it to not happening again. We can getting further to the community policy, for example, in the first, oh, this is actually becoming against the bylaws, and you are really not becoming supportive to the first community for that, and probably penalties or another kind of accountability can be executed by that, or we can going further if the damage is actually pretty bad and pretty huge to the local area of the regularity. So this is actually the forms of the example that how to handle the TLPs and how to understand it, how to do it pretty well, and how to prevent the TLP to be misinterpreted and to be used in the right way. That's it for the explanation. This is only for the example of the framework that can be used for all of you and for all of us. So by this, I'm going to end this presentation so we can go to the discussion mode. That's it, Gracie.
Thank you, Rick. Any questions or any comments? Okay, so I think you're making a really good point that this is not legislation. There is no legislation behind that. Behind classified systems, there's legislation, and there's
Yes.
very clear framework of what the penalties are. What's even more interesting here in our case is that if we have a person that violates a TOP, that allegedly violated TOP, it is unclear um, actually what the company what are the different parties in that, because one thing is, let's say, whoever is presenting the material, let's say at a conference, another party is is the employer of that person, as you gave the example with their manager leaking information and so on. So it's very difficult here to also even adjudicate what is fault, because as the example you provided, the manager sharing the information, uh, yeah, the information was originally given to a particular person, and they shared it later because it was Amber Strict. They shared it appropriately within their own group, but then the manager violated the rule. But then again, we cannot blame the manager because maybe the manager did not clearly understand how TOP works, or maybe the manager was not clearly given indication. So basically, what I'm going here is that there is really no way for us to adjudicate fault in those cases, which in turn is unfair to whoever is punished, but also can create very serious legal backlash, because if somebody gets fired for some unclear reasons, they're going to have a very big lawsuits on their hands, basically going after the employer. So while I'm not providing solution, I just wanted to call that out, that one of the biggest problems we have before we even get to consequences is adjudicating fault.
Yeah, I think that
Now,
is a very good point here.
also one of the other problems we have in this community is that there's a lot of clicks and a lot of herd mentality. And yes, I did say that on a recording. And this is where we have a lot of issues that once somebody is blamed to be bad in the eyes of the community, then it's very difficult for them to clear their name as well. So somebody may very incorrectly accuse somebody of leaking information that was shared under TOP. And again, we do not have a forum where this person can clear their name, which again is another problem.
That is why actually the concept or the framework to handle that should be exist. It's like to prevent
Hmm.
those kind of the demerit for some false accusation or misunderstanding for that, right? So
Yeah.
if we are living it as per it is, so probably people will just can misjudge a person, and that kind of the information can be interpret to another person as really bad. So they don't want to risk anything to be leaked and so on. So that is actually not gonna be a very productive way to actually keeping the community into the very positive way to keep on sharing the usual stuff. We have questions. I think, Vladimir, do you have the things to add or?
Yeah, so first of all, I think it's more like ethics and reputation trade-off. Because I've been in these situations, especially a decade ago, when we shared a lot of raw data with the vendors when I was on the customer side. And I think what you're saying, it's about ethics, like ethical behavior. And unethical behavior or accusation can lead to the ruin of reputation, and reputation is a basis for community interaction. So, while I think it's important issue, I think we really need, I also agree we need a mechanism for roughly uh, the same mechanism as criminal forums have, where we can open the dispute and where are arbiters who decide like who is wrong and who is right. So like even criminals forums having those regulation while the community don't. So, and any random accusation could lead into losing reputation and losing access to the data without any reasons for some people. But my first question would be actually like any reasons you start this presentation, any precedent, or what drove you to make those slides?
Well, I hope you like the Mortal Kombat too.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Lori, do you have questions?
Yes, hi. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if there's an expiration date attached
Mm.
to a TLP rate designation.
That Mhm.
It seems like it happened like 2 weeks, 30 days or whatever, but there's no indication anywhere that it does. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
that is actually very good questions. But we have to understand firstly about this concept of the definitions, who's gonna involve with the TLP itself. In this page, it has a very good explanation about the definition of community, organization, and clients. But it somehow doesn't inform much information about the source. Well, actually, there is a source for that, and source being the words of sources are being used in the many multiple sentences over there too. And go back to the this part. The source is actually has to make sure that the communities, organization, or client that in receive the information in the recipient's part to understand about how it is gonna be shared. Meanings, if it has the expiry dates, he has to explain that. If not, then probably people will think it's gonna be infinity. So it's not the community's organization or client's fault for thinking about that if the source is not defined that way. So that is actually the obligations of the source to make sure that the community organization or client that's gonna be involved in receiving this information to understand those.
Yeah, I think actually, Lori, here I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think where you're heading towards here is that we do not have clear tracking of the levels of information labeling, and we also do not have the equivalent of a declassification authority. So once something is emitted in particular way, it really is immutable. We can't change it. So how do we solve that problem? I think is the bigger question.
Well, we have to understand firstly about the history of the TLP itself, right? So because of TLP was born like between the security communities, person-to-person communication spaces firstly. Like I want to talk about this with you, and this is a TLP rate, right? You understand about that? They understand each other about the, based on the trust that has been built already, and the morally similarity of the background and so on. Then sharing is gonna be established after they understand by tagging the information into some labels of the TLP before. But that was then. This is now, and what happened is widely used. In the bigger, wider, and the many more complicated platforms and events and so on. So tagging is not enough, but we have to understand that firstly we have to really understand, and don't get me don't think about the wrong stuff. TLP is the standard. We have to admit it. It's not a tag anymore, and we have the ISO for that. We have versions of the TLP2 right now, but the lack of the understanding about what is being actually defined is actually leading to the misinterpretation here. That is one. Number two is the procedures to handle those into the right way if the kind of the misinterpretation
Yeah.
happens is not being in place. So this
Yeah,
is
I see.
yeah.
No,
So this is
go ahead,
actually
Eric.
so this is
Uh,
actually the stuff that we need to to prevent. Go
Yes,
ahead,
and I
Rashid.
want to acknowledge Vladimir has his hands, but I just
Oh,
want to follow up on something here. So there are a couple of issues with TOP as it is. First, the TOP that I presume you're talking about is actually only a first community standard. It is actually not an international standard. The international standard, which has the exact same name, is held by ISO. And there's even a bigger problem that those two quote unquote standards actually are different from each other. One of the big differences is the caveats that were added to the community standard of first, and also TOP white in first was called TOP clear. So this is where we have some issues that we need to also, we cannot create separation and go away from international standards while overloading the name because this creates further confusion. And I'll just leave it at that. If anybody wants to answer to me, and then Vladimir will get the mic.
Laurie, probably you have
Thank you. Yes. In the ISO world, there's usually an update every 5 years. You can see this one is dated 2015. And it should have been updated in 2020, 2022 timeframe. That didn't happen. I'm still watching and waiting for this one to come up, and then I'll be able to ensure that the TLP in first aligns with the TLP in the ISO standard. I don't believe it'll be a problem. It's just a matter of waiting for an opportunity to update that annex. And it may not come at all. They may think it's fine the way it is, things change, but I am watching out for it.
Yeah, and I was thinking we should start kind of starting we as a community first, which is a smaller community than the international community that stands behind ISO, and and a large number of very big standards behind it. We should start converging in with that other standard, I think. Uh, Vladimir?
Yeah, actually, like my rule of thumb always been if I talk with your audience about threat intelligence, then initially I did a short training on what is TLP, what it means with case studies before sharing any information. So that's the rule of thumb number one. And the rule number two, simply the person who shares the information controls the TLP distribution. Which means if you're not sure, or even if something like TLP red was shared with you and you want to share with particular person which wasn't in the circle, you just approach the owner of the information and get an explicit permission. So, and I think like those rules are really good to keep in good shape, except, I don't know, like at first, I think 2015 at Siemens there was threat intelligence colloquium. I think one of the problems I highlighted at the time was TLP of the next hop, roughly. And my idea was if information travels farther, the TLP should be increased one level up. Somehow this addressed by TLP Amber Strict, but I'm not sure it's still fully addressed, like what we do at the next hop of sharing.
Well, one of the problems here you're kind of also alluding to, though, is that if, for example, I go and get access to particular material, let's say under TLP Amber, and I share it with my own group, then I know who the owner of the information is. I know who
The
is the
source.
source.
Yeah.
However, nobody else in my team knows. And let's say I go to another company. Now this was shared within the group, and maybe a week after I share it, I go and work for for another company.
Mhm.
Now they do not know what is the original source. So maybe we should also start looking at how to designate the original source, or as in the other world, it would be the classification
Yeah.
authority
Like the
who issued it.
CPIP. Like the
Yeah.
CPIP protocol, we know exactly where the source is. So I think
Mhm.
that is a very good point. We are probably missing about to explain that this is actually firstly heard in here by this person who is the source. I think that is a very good point that has to be stated, and that person is expected this information to be shared as the TLP Amber strict. So in that case, he can also explain that like Vladimir also explained, the source is explaining about some cases like this and this and this cannot be happen. So you have to follow that. Those kind of the things I think is a very good idea to be added to make sure that we can actually put the scheme into the play here.
Yeah. Well, actually, let me throw in another curveball here. How about Amber plus strict? So I go at a place and I
Mhm.
attend a conference. Vladimir is showing me something Amber plus strict. However, I am a member of my own company, and I am also a member of, let's say, FSISAC. Thus, what is the correct sharing behavior? Because I am part of the two organizations. I am going to still strictly only share within my organization. But the question is there a qualifier? What is considered to be my organization?
So definition is as per shown in the screen, limited disclosure. Recipients can only spread and need
To
to
the organization only. See,
yes,
organization is very
and its
loose.
clients and its clients.
Yeah, that's even worse, right?
Yep. So we have to define. We have to know actually who's the organization is and what kind of the client that they are having actually. At least
Mm-hmm.
the sources to has to understand those before starting to share anything with the Amber or Amber Strict. So this is why I actually not pretty, in the uh, very easy in seeing the TLP Amber Streak, or even Red being shared in a conference, because I'm pretty sure that the many of the sources not actually thinking that far, not understanding about what kind of the scope they're actually being uh, reached, uh, or probably being shared to. So
Mm-hmm.
this is the stuff that actually being